Welcome to the October 12th edition of the PFF Forecasts. We have back again by popular demand, I think. I didn't really poll the people, but we think it was popular. Seth Galina is back. We are going to talk about the Thursday night game to a certain degree. It is Commanders-Bears. So we have some other interesting things like what the hell's wrong with Russell Wilson and Seth's pet peeve of football. We're going to make that a recurring segment. Then we're going to dive into Cowboys-Eagles, the Sunday night battle. Look at that from a scheme perspective. Hopefully can be as successful as the bets that we identified last week on Wednesday, where we picked out some prop winners on Thursday night. And the Bengals plus 3.5 is our lock of the week. And then we will welcome Tej Seth on, who's going to help us pick this week's lock. Let's rock. All right, Seth. Party sandwiches was the topic du jour last week. I feel as though, so to refresh any members of the printing press that missed last week, Seth Galina is going to be on with us every Wednesday, going to break down Thursday and Sunday night football from a scheme perspective, as you do for none other than Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Collinsworth, who happen to call those games. I feel, okay, that this game, Commanders-Bears, is the party sandwich of, reception food, right? It is, as you described it, the thing you serve at a funeral. And I might add, at a funeral for someone you don't really like. And that's what this feels like, a funeral for someone you don't really like. Can you describe it any better than that?
No, and if you want to get specific with which type of party sandwich it is, it's the one you brought up last time. It's the cream cheese, circular cream cheese one. I think those are the worst ones, and I think this is what we're getting on Thursday night.
Let's get this one out of the way then, so we can move on to bigger and better topics. You wrote about the decline of Russell Wilson, and we'll transition into that. But let's get Thursday night out of the way here. Commanders at Bears. The Bears, amazingly, are favored in this game. Stunningly. One of my favorite visualizations of this season, data visualizations, is what Timo puts out, which is what happens on dropbacks for teams. And you see at the top of the list, you've got the Bucks, because Tom Brady almost always gets a throw off. And then at 60% of the time, you see the Chicago Bears down at the bottom, and it's a complete nightmare. Seth, where do you start with this game?
I mean, I think when you talk about the Bears this season, we know that going into the year, after what they did this offseason, that it was going to always be a referendum on where Justin Fields is, because they didn't put a lot of talent around him. And they said, hey, we're going to see what we have right now. We're not going to spend a lot of money. And look, they have 2 wins. I'm not sure how. They're not a very good football team. So, yeah, I think we have to start with Justin Fields and where he is in his progression as a quarterback. I thought that I will preface this by saying that I thought that after Trevor Lawrence, he was probably the second best quarterback prospect over the last 10 years. He happened to be in the same draft class as Trevor Lawrence, but I thought he was absolutely fantastic in college. So tell you, my bias is there when I say that it's just not working out right now in the NFL. And you just mentioned he won't get off a throw. I think there are so many times when you'll see guys running open, and he needs something to click in his head where he feels comfortable making throws to open receivers. It's like, oh, I might make a bad play here. And you just got to let it rip sometimes. And then, unfortunately, the other side of the coin is when he does let it rip, the accuracy is just hit or miss. A good example of that, we're cherry picking a little bit, but a good example of that is last week. He threw 2 what we'd call slot fades to Darnell Mooney. One is the worst throw you'll ever see, and one, allowed Mooney to make a really nice catch for a 30-plus yard gain. So, but we can't have that in the NFL, right? Like obviously, okay, we're taking him with 2 throws, but like that's been him for his whole career, which is like almost 1 in every 2 throws is just not very good. So, like I said, it's going to be a referendum every week on Justin Fields. He has not played up to the level that he kind of needs to play at this point in his career, probably. And it's, in my opinion, it just doesn't look good for the future.
33rd out of 36 quarterbacks in PFF grade thus far, which I think probably sums it up well, what you said. Now, Brad Spielberger, PFF_Brad, the goatee, the second stage in the evolution of man, as we have here on the forecast today, is in Chicago, not in Chicago, is a Chicago Bears devout fan, I should say. I assume you were very excited. I don't know for sure, but I assume you were very excited when Fields was drafted, when they traded up for him. It seems, Seth, as you would have said, as I did, that was a fantastic move. Let's go back to that day. You are a team other than the Bears. Say you're the Jets, the Niners. Like, how do you evaluate Justin Fields? Can you evaluate him? I'll start with you, Brad. Like, was he QB2 in your mind? Where is he now? And then Seth, how do you feel about him?
Yeah, no, he no question was. I mean, probably in part because of opinions from people like Seth, but I also think you watch Ohio State football and some of the plays he made, and I think the big thing for me was he wasn't a runner. People kept trying to say he was a runner. He ran this 4.39 40, but his first instinct actually was not to bail the pocket. He liked to stand in and try to throw the football and only use that as a last resort. And I always felt like that was going to translate very well. And he was going to be that kind of stand in there, take the hit, which he still does, from time to time. But you watch him, and I want to ask Seth about this. He has changed his throwing motion from last year to this year. They tried to shorten it down, and I think the accuracy has gotten noticeably worse, like Seth mentioned, and I'm just wondering if he's just thinking too many things while he's standing there on a snap-by-snap basis.
I think that's it. I mean, when I look at the kind of, like you said, shorter throwing motion, it does look like a lot of the things that the modern way of teaching quarterbacks how to throw. So, like, I have no problem with that per se. But when I look at him, I feel like, and I wrote this off during the draft process, because when you looked at Trevor Lawrence, and obviously Trevor Lawrence is also having a relatively rough start to his career. When you looked at the differences between those two, and when they threw the football, Trevor, in a sense, they had the same kind of wind-up type of motion, but Trevor's was still lightning quick when he decided to make that decision. The ball from decision made in his head to being released from his hand was lightning fast. And with Fields, it's always been slower. It's a slower process. And I find that it's hard for him to adapt kind of mid decision. And that's what you're always adapting as that ball is being kind of cocked back to be ready to be released. And it puts him behind on a lot of throws where he's thinking receiver is going to be somewhere and they're kind of not. And he doesn't have that, almost like he doesn't have the ability to adjust on the fly. And you see that kind of with his throwing motion, also just reading coverages and stuff like that. So that's where I am with him. And then when I think about him as a prospect, I just think I'm at the point, I'm fed up. I'm at the point where I'm just I don't know anymore how to do this job. I'm just this guy. I watched this guy, and every throw was perfect, and it was so good. And we even said, hey, this Ohio State offense, they run, across the middle of the field, and there's tougher throws and stuff like that. And it's I guess not, man. I guess not. So that's kind of where I am with this stuff, and I'm just everything I thought is clearly wrong. Every year I get one thing very wrong, and this is the one from last year where I'm just I thought that offense made a lot of sense in terms of translating what he did, and kind of clearly not.
Okay, I have two hypotheses. So, first thing you mentioned, and I think it's a really good point, Brad, the changing of the throwing motion. Look, we've seen quarterbacks with elite athletic tools who have made incredible throws in college come in and suck. Josh Allen, notably. And what Josh Allen did was, and Seth will know this better than I, of course, but changed a lot of what he did. I'm not sure if it was as much the throwing motion as it was also footwork and those kinds of things, but changed what he did from a pure quarterbacking perspective, and it is now elite. By the way, a thing that changed for Josh Allen as well was going from a dog shit pardon my French, supporting cast to perhaps the best supporting cast in the NFL when you consider receivers, coaches, the whole thing. So is that, is it something where we just have to be patient? And this is also a byproduct of the fact that he is, working with a team that's subpar. And then the second thing I'll say is, I think a lot about this from a golfing perspective as an analogy. You see golfers change their swing a lot. You saw this. Now, I'm not comparing Tiger Woods and Justin Fields here, but like Tiger would change his swing and he would kind of stink by his standards. It wasn't like he was ever really bad unless he, crashed his car pulling out of his driveway. But, it takes time. And so as we look at this game in particular, I can already see where I'm kind of feeling from a betting perspective, because I don't expect a guy to throw his way out of it like on a short week in the line of fire. But I guess, are you ready to dramatically change your opinion of him and write him off, given the things you just said and the context around him?
Yeah, I mean, once you have this narrative about the player, like your narrative about the player from his college days, it's hard to get away from that. So I still think of him like, okay, well, when it clicks, look at the talent. It's unbelievable because he can push the ball down the field. He can scramble. Like you said, not a runner, but when he does scramble, it's really, really nice. I mean, he had a few nice ones against the Vikings last weekend. So, everything that tells me I still should hold on to my hope for him. And like you said, there's always the Josh Allen story and fixing mechanics. And like you said, footwork, hips, firing the hips first was a really big thing for Allen. Maybe that's part of what Justin Fields needs to do. But as of right now, it's just tough to see a bright future, I think, based on the play. Because again, it's like, with Allen, you had like the best arm in the league. You didn't just have like Fields' arm is B plus something like there, B plus something like that. Allen's is A, right? Allen's is A plus even. That's where the issues are. And Allen still has like not issues. I mean, he's unbelievable, but he gets away with a lot of stuff because of that. Mm-hmm. And can Fields get away with a lot of stuff without the like elite trait that Josh Allen has? That would be my concern.
Let's get out of here with one last question, as we do with each of these games. What's the biggest mismatch or matchup that you're looking at in this game, Seth?
Yeah, I think that an interesting one is the Commanders' offensive line versus a very bad Bears defensive line. Robert Quinn still got a little bit of juice. I'll give him that. He hasn't been, racking up the sacks like he did last year, but he's got some juice. He's kind of the only one that gives you any type of juice there on the defensive line. They're moving players around on the Commanders' offensive line, but a guy like Charles Leno has been actually really solid for them. Norwell inside, not great, but they have some pieces there, and I think the offensive line has been actually okay. Obviously, they give up a lot of sacks. They have Carson Wentz as their quarterback. That's going to happen. So I think that that to me could be a really big matchup problem for the Bears. And I think if you give Wentz some time, maybe you get one of the few good Wentz games of the season.
The spread right now, Chicago -1, total at 38. Hilarious. This season has been really something to behold from an unders perspective. The bet that we're making on this game, because we must, the only way we can get through this game. I'll tell you what, there's supposed to be playoff baseball on at the same time. It would take a hell of a lot more than Commanders Bears for me to not watch this game. So I will bet on it. Brad, to you first, your favorite bet.
Yeah, it's not even a spread or total bet. I think Curtis Samuel over 4.5 receptions is interesting. We have no Logan Thomas and no Jahan Dotson in this game. Kyler Gordon, the Bears' second-round pick, their slot corner, is bottom 5 right now in yards per coverage snap, has just been kind of getting abused, frankly. I like Curtis Samuel to get targeted a lot. Early in the shot clock, find him early, get him involved early. I think I like over 4.5 a good amount.
Love the NBA reference. It's time. I was just getting some basketball content on my Instagram feed. I saw this amazing video. It was the Nets shooting around at looked like a charity for kids in New York. And they have Ben Simmons come across and takes this jump shot. And it looks it looks like me shooting a jump shot cold for the first time after doing, a lot of lifting, nowhere near the basket. So I cannot wait. I cannot wait for the NBA to start. Seth, where are you going in this one?
First of all, the NHL started last night, by the way, just
thank
so
you.
you know.
Appreciate it.
I was looking at PFF Greenline, and one of the things that really jumped out at me, and PFF Greenline likes this as well, is John Bates, the tight end for Washington, under 1.5 receptions. And the interesting thing there is Washington under Scott Turner that's the offensive coordinator, has been a sneaky kind of spread air raid type of team. They don't play with a tight end like attached to the line of scrimmage like most, like everyone else, save for the Cardinals do. It's 4 open, we call it, 2x2, 3x1, everyone spread, right? And so you're replacing Logan Thomas, who's going to be out in the slot, with John Bates, who's just not that type of athlete, doesn't command that type of target share, obviously. So I like the under 1.5 receptions for John Bates.
I'm going to, once again, last week, I gave the members of the printing press an absolute delight. Melvin Gordon under 58.5 rushing yards. It went to overtime. He got all of the carries, and he still went under 58.5. He even went under 54.5, which was the number I would played it down to. So in Seth, I trust. I am going to rock with your mismatch around the offensive line for the Commanders against the Bears. As bad as the Commanders are, I just think they're a real-ish football team, and I'm not sure the Bears are right now. Carson Wentz, a real-ish quarterback, like he is in the top 5 in big-time throws in the NFL, even though he has plenty of turnover-worthy plays. I'm not going to bet on his interceptions. I'm going to bet on the number of touchdown passes over 1.5 at plus 153. I love him getting time. I love exactly what Brad is talking about as well at that plus price. Bet 100, win 153. This will be the one time I bet on Carson Wentz in our time together, and you can write that down. Let's transition here to you mentioned tight ends, Seth. Your pet peeve, Seth's pet peeve. People that are familiarizing themselves with Seth, members of the listenership here, the printing press. If you're not aware, Seth very opinionated. We love Seth's opinions on football in particular. What is a pet peeve of yours in football?
So what I see a lot of on Twitter, and it's not just on Twitter, you're watching the game with some buddies and you get this comment all the time. What ends up happening is you get a sack, they show the replay, the 4-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro defensive end edge rusher is rushing against a tight end. He beats the tight end, gets a sack. Why are we blocking edge rushers, defensive ends with tight ends? And it's like no one, like I just want to explain what's going on here. And it's just in a world where you have to run play action, and you can even get into specifics and say you have to run play action that looks like your zone run game. You're going to have, we don't have to get into super specifics, but you're going to have a tight end who's on the end of the line of scrimmage, and you're making it look like run. He's going to have to block a defensive end sometimes, and a good one at that. Like, it's just like, if we're going to run play action, it's going to have to happen. And the other thing is just the bias of when it does happen, we go crazy, but it happens like 8 to 10 times a game, maybe not 8 to 10 times a game, but let's say 5 to 8 times a game. We don't say anything when it works out.
Or it works, yeah.
Yeah, the defensive end thinks it's run. He doesn't rush as hard, and then they're able to make a play off of it. So it's just something that it happens every game. It needs to happen. It's not like, I guarantee you this is not happening when your quarterback is taking the snap from shotgun and dropping back and there's no play action. I guarantee you tight ends are not blocking Von Miller. But it has to happen in other facets of the game to allow you to run all the play action that we know and love.
Speaking of, I got to jump in. Speaking of tight ends and DNs, are you saying you prefer it when, as happened on Monday night, when Clelin Ferrell is lined up out wide over Travis Kelce? Was that something you prefer in that situation?
Well, this is actually going to be my pet peeve of the week for next week. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. That maybe you should find a better matchup than that.
Yeah, that's not a good one. You're talking about, obviously, like the color the color analyst on TV like gets irate about these things. We're going to make it through this entire podcast without losing our minds about fourth down decisions and analytics, because enough of the discourse has happened on social media, quite frankly. But generally, I find that the broadcast booths are like at least a year behind. Remember the great RPO revolution of like 2019 or whatever? And I mean, even the best on television in Al and Chris, like Al was over here just like, yeah, I think that was an RPO, Chris. What do you think? And it was, it had no idea what it was at that moment. We figured it out, obviously. I think it'll take maybe Troy a few more weeks to figure that one out. Let's go to we're going to get to Sunday Night Football here in a second. Before I do, reminder, the PFF app is out. You can find it on the Apple App Store by searching PFF and then downloading it. Some of the things that I'm talking about, like our player props, like Carson Wentz there, you can find that plus a lot more on the PFF app. You get a full boat of mismatches, not just the ones that Seth highlights here, plus all of the great written content from Brad and Seth, delivered right to your fingertips. And by the way, it's kind of free right now, so you should go check it out. Go make it happen. Seth, something you wrote this week was about Russell Wilson. We talked about him on Thursday for the Thursday night game last week. It wasn't pretty. The indelible moment in my mind was the slant route. If it was to Judy, I forget who it was.
To Tyree Cleveland.
Yeah.
That's right, to Cleveland, who's now playing in the playoffs against the Yankees. The slant route on the outside, right side against Stephon Gilmore. Cleveland, to his credit, wins off the line, beats Gilmore, and Russell Wilson fires a dart 3 yards behind him right into Stephon Gilmore's stomach. It was not pretty. What is your assessment right now of Russell Wilson?
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where, the issues with Russell Wilson, even in Seattle, was that he could not he would not throw the ball over the middle of the field. He could not do it, would not do it, whatever it is. So his coordinators had to kind of develop offenses to mitigate those type of throws. So you kind of leave yourself with not a ton of different types of pass concepts that you can run if your quarterback's not going to be able to throw to those areas of the field. However, we're talking about Russell Wilson here. Elite accuracy, elite playmaking ability. So it made up for it. The issue now is he doesn't want to move around in the pocket anymore. Well, in terms of, he does. He tries to get away from sacks, but he can't. His pressure to sack rate, I got it right. His pressure to sack rate has kind of ballooned higher than it's ever been this season. And it was kind of trending to a certain degree that way the past few seasons as well. So he's not getting out there. That means he can't be the Russell Wilson that we love, where he's running around for 5 seconds and then he throws to the back corner of the end zone for an insane touchdown. Can't do that. Like you just talked about, the accuracy is horrific. Is it injury related? Because he came back from the finger injury last year, and that seems to be when it happened. You don't want to speculate about that stuff, but the timeline kind of works out pretty good. So it's like, well, what's left? You can't run a full offense with him. He can't be the playmaker, and he can't be accurate. So I'm not sure what's left to do here. Look, you can say whatever you want about Nathaniel Hackett, and obviously the game management stuff. They really could be 3-2, because of the loss in Seattle to open the season. But they haven't been good on offense. The defense has been saving them. It's been really, really good this year. And I think it's the issue is he might get the accuracy back. Maybe the finger heals. Maybe the shoulder that was announced this week, heals or something. Though apparently it's not going to heal this year. But the athleticism, I think, is the thing that we kind of know at this point is not. He's 34 or he's 35 or whatever. That's not coming back. So it's scary season for a team that just paid a lot of money for him.
Are you saying what I think you're saying, which is his diet, all of those danger wraps?
Yeah.
Not so great. Not really helping out the athleticism.
Yeah.
For good old, the funny thing about Russ is he's never he's been kind of sneaky athletic. He's always been kind of a chunky monkey back there, and I guess you'd expect that to go a little more quickly. But I don't know. I think the question from my perspective, and I'm not a doctor by any stretch of the imagination, but if you go back to that timeline, and I went back and read a few things, there are a couple things to think about here, and we're actually going to get into something somewhat similar with Cooper Rush here. Geno Smith played well. Like the stuff that we're seeing Geno Smith do this year, it's been really impressive. He's been fantastic, but he played really well. I mean, I won a lot of money betting on Geno Smith when he stepped in for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson came back really quickly from that finger injury. And, there's a couple things at play. One is you come back, a little soon, maybe that never heals. Maybe it heals in a way that you are just, totally a different person, but also maybe you compensate for it. That causes you to change what you're doing or, to injure yourself in other ways. So, is it I feel like is a really, he's not throwing the ball accurately. Accuracy, to your point, was like his calling. I mean, he was a deadly accurate quarterback in the past. So I wonder if it's just a simple fact is the dude, tried to be a hero and it has really backfired on him.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I can talk about scheme. I can talk about playmaker stuff. I can talk about whatever I want about quarterback play, processing, whatever. You can't throw the ball accurately. You can't play. And that's the biggest thing. We can have this discussion for 6 hours. If you can't throw the ball accurately, you can't play quarterback. I know. Everyone who's seen me play quarterback in Division 6 flag football in Montreal, Quebec knows that. But that's the quarterback problem.
So you talk about accuracy. Not that he was ever maybe making lists for the most, the strongest arm in the NFL, but he had that slingshot ability to throw, the ball to the moon and hit guys deep downfield. Even the touchdown week 1 of Jerry Jeudy was an underthrown ball that happened to turn into a touchdown. Are you also seeing a lack of velocity and a lack of kind of arm strength as well?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit. I mean, it's always tough to tell exactly because is he throwing is he throwing down the field as much? I don't know. So I'm not exactly sure about, but it does seem like you said that there's been some underthrows. The Jeudy one on Monday Night Football is a prime example of that. And then, yeah, it's just the arm strength is just not. But he's 34. Right. And the only guy who's ever continued to have a strong arm past that age is Tom Brady. There's one guy in history. We don't have to dive into the reasons of why that might be, but this is just this one guy in history, right?
I don't know what you're insinuating. Are you trying to dive into the conspiracy theory that Giselle is a witch? And
I saw that. TB12 versus the Danger Witch. What is your breakdown on TB12 versus the Danger Witch?
Oh my God. The funny thing is that I actually, a bet that I like at the moment, and I guess you have Hurts, you have Allen in the MVP conversation right now. I kind of like Tom Brady sneaky with people on his team getting healthy to make a play there. Russell Wilson, though, back to that, he's a 5.5-point underdog on Monday Night Football to the Los Angeles Clippers of Los Angeles. That's incredible. That is absolutely amazing. That's how little faith. I think I'm going to bet the Broncos. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, plus 5.5. Let's flip really quickly, though, Seth, to Geno. Because Geno had 5 big-time throws last week. Those are PFF's highest graded throws. He was the first quarterback this year to record a +2 grade. That's the highest grade we can give on a throw. And when I found that out on Monday morning, a little chat with some of the analysts, and I went in and started watching some of his highlights, and I couldn't figure out which throw it was because there were so many. He had multiple throws rolling out to his left where he just laid the ball into a perfect position for the receiver. The highest graded throw ended up being the one into triple coverage to Tyler Lockett. Seth, I mean, you're more of a historian than I am. When has this happened before? Have we seen a guy that's been dormant for this long, that has played this well? Are you buying him continuing to play this well? What the hell's going on?
Yeah, I think, obviously the story with Geno Smith is should he have ever been relegated to the bench as often as he was for the past 8 years? A lot of guys who are similar in talent get the shots that he didn't get. So, I mean, but putting that aside, in terms of what he's doing on the field right now, it is stunning. And I'm racking my brain as I'm writing this article, trying to find different idea is, oh, okay, well, now the Seahawks can run the quote unquote Rams offense because they brought in the Rams offensive coordinator last year, Shane Waldron. He couldn't really do what he wanted to do because of the stuff we talked about with Russell Wilson. He can do it now, and it's good. And it's like, look, at the end of the day, and they are running similar stuff, obviously. At the end of the day, Geno Smith is playing accurately, he's playing on time, and he's making throws in tight windows that a lot of quarterbacks are not willing to make. In the seams, he's unbelievable. Like vertically down the seams, he's unbelievable. You talked about those. There was 2 throws to Lockett. One of them was the highest graded throw. There was the one where he's rolling out to his left and he flips his hips and throws a corner route to Metcalf. Like I'm trying to find other things that are like kind of cool that show that I know football, other than the only thing I could find is that he's playing out of his freaking mind right now. And that's it. He just, like I said, on time. There's no weird hitches. He knows where to go with the football, and he's throwing the ball accurately. His accuracy numbers are like mid tier, I guess, right now, like middle of the league. But I don't think it probably doesn't do justice enough to how on time. When you play on time, you can be a little off, right? And he's playing on incredible time and then not missing open receivers. In terms of like going through his progressions, he'll find you. It's special. It's really special right now.
So are you like, he's a top 5 graded quarterback right now. What are you buying him at long term?
I'd like it. I saw on Twitter today, I forget who it was, talking about Tannehill as a comparison. Tannehill coming in to the Titans, we didn't know what Tannehill was for a long time. He came in and he has this career resurgence. Now they are running a lot of play action with him, with Geno Smith. But I still look at the plays where there's no play action and it's just straight dropbacks from the gun, no play action, no RPOs, no screens, and he's still killing it. And I don't think that was ever quite the case with Tannehill. I think there were some good seasons in there probably, but not quite at this elite level. I mean, he's basically number 1 in the league in those categories for us in passing grade. So I think it's realer, and you said it. He played well last year, not as good as he's playing this year, but it's a lot realer than I think people would imagine. I'll give credit to the offensive line. 2 new starting rookies at tackle, and they've been holding up. The offensive line has played really well. They're running the football very well. 2 great receivers. Lockett probably one of the more underrated receivers in the past 10 years. DK, if DK didn't have a drop problem, he wouldn't be able. They wouldn't allow him to play in the league because he would be too good. Like the league. Like he drops balls, but it's okay, or else he would be the best receiver of all time. So I don't know. It's just like everything seems real to me with Geno, it just seems like it's just a fun story.
It is a fun story. Speaking of fun stories, the Dallas Cowboys 4-0 with Cooper Rush. They're 4-1 against the spread. They go up against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday night, who are 5-0, 3-2 against the spread. Jalen Hurts probably right now is the front runner for MVP, up there with Josh Allen. If you were to end the season today, Cooper Rush, despite being undefeated as well, I don't think is in the top of the MVP hopefuls.
That was going to be my lock of the week is Cooper Rush MVP.
Yeah. This is such an interesting game. The Dallas Cowboys are a 6-point underdog in Philadelphia. Where do you start with this one, Seth?
Yeah, this is a fun one because you're going to get top offense versus top defense with the Eagles offense versus the Cowboys defense. I think it's really interesting when you look at what Dan Quinn, the Cowboys defensive coordinators, I think is going to try and do against the Eagles. They give you a lot of things to deal with. The Eagles give you a lot of things to deal with on one play, right? We talk about RPOs all the time. They'll give you this, you got to defend this. Bubble screen, for example, you got to defend inside zone, and you got to defend the fact that the quarterback can pull the ball and run it himself. Like, it's tough. It's triple option. It's literally what it is, triple option. So, like, they do all that stuff. You got to defend it. The Cowboys are still, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about with modern defense, too high defense. Cowboys still on first and second down, when it's a base down, they are going to load the box. They're going to play with one high safety. They're going to show you that they're playing with one high safety, and they're going to try and stop you that way. And I think what that does is maybe you can handle the run game. Now, the Eagles' offensive line has been great this year, and the Cowboys' interior is just okay against the run. So there still could be some movement there, and Eagles might still be able to run the ball. But what it does is it gives you one-on-ones on the outside. And Trevon Diggs having a good season. Anthony Brown's like a pretty good player also, opposite of him. But like those two guys that the Eagles have on the outside are one-on-one winners, probably against anyone in the league at this point. So I like that matchup. It's going to be up to the Eagles to say, hey, if we're not getting that push inside, like let's just throw the ball outside and we're okay with that. So I think I'd like that. Throwing the ball on early downs. Maybe the RPO is still there, though it's a lot different when you're playing against a one-high defense. I think these one-on-ones are really there they're really ripe for the taking for the Eagles offense.
So you talked about the Eagles kind of throwing the kitchen sink at you on offense. I was looking at our data earlier. The Cowboys right now are stunting on a 10% higher rate than every other team in the NFL on passing downs. 50% of passing downs are stunting. Can you kind of explain, what that does to an offensive line, how that kind of confuses the guys trying to figure out their assignment, and just what it can do for Dan Quinn on defense?
Yeah, it helps them a lot, and they're like you said, they do it at like by far the highest rate in the league. And two things that it can do. So one, the communication on offense, on the offensive line, just having to deal with passing off people. Hey, one guy is coming my way, but I might have to deal with another guy who's looping in, passing off this guy to pick up the looper, so on and so forth. Eagles offensive line is a veteran group, with Kelsey and Lane Johnson and the guys. I forgot his name, but the one of the guards with the long hair is playing really, really well as well.
Wow, so incredible work there, Seth. Do you work for a football analytics company?
I can't see his name because his hair covers it on the film.
Interesting. But by the way, just not to actually, I meant to interrupt here to say, really interesting point. Jason Kelsey questionable with the leg.
He came back in the game last week, but that's still something that is a huge loss for them right now.
So are we expecting him to play? And then I guess from a football perspective, how integral is a center like Kelsey to those stunts? And what would any hindrance, is it more of a mental thing? Like you need Kelsey's mental out there, or would like him being at 80%, of himself with a leg injury, impact him? So, but first off, Brad, we're expecting him to play, I assume?
Yeah, he's a guy that just does not miss games. Unless he's truly missing a leg, he'll be out there.
So I think with Kelsey and the center position, those games, those stunts are happening between the tackle and the guard usually. So with the center position where he's really needed, especially with the young quarterback behind him, is dealing with where we are going to kind of set the protection, kind of which direction we're going to set the protection to a certain degree against different type of blitz looks. Right? I mean, even just regular looks, but like mostly versus blitz looks. I think that's where the veteranness of Jason Kelsey comes in, is going to be when or if the Cowboys start coming with guys a nickel, and a slot blitz and a safety blitz, and then the crossing linebackers or whatever it may be. Right, that's where the center plays into it in terms of communication pre-snap. With the games that the Cowboys are into, that's really just it is a unspoken thing. And when I say unspoken, I mean hours and hours of practice between the tackle and the guard to know when to pass off guys and deal with them that way. One of the reasons the Cowboys are so good at it is because with Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, they have the speed. So what they'll do a lot is, like Micah Parsons playing against the tackle. He's outside the tackle, right? He starts rushing and then he cuts inside the tackle, right? He is so good and he is so fast that he can just win that one-on-one. So that tackle is thinking, man, I need to stay on this guy and just ride him wherever he goes and just hope that he doesn't get near the quarterback and pray. And what happens is now you get the defensive tackle or something looping around him, and there's no one for him because the tackle didn't want to pass off that player, that Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Lawrence. So like that's what they have, is that speed on the outside really puts tackles in a bind for them to say, okay, I can't really pass this off because I'm already getting beat. If I could hold the guy up, then we can have a look around and we can pass it off. But with guys like Marco Parsons, who's, I mean, as good as anyone in the league at rushing the passer right now, it's tough to deal with.
So fascinating data point here. The Eagles are third in expected points added per play. Essentially, how good are you at offense on a per play basis against stunts? Okay, they're actually nowhere near the number one team, which is the Buffalo Bills, and I think that's interesting and cool. But they've also faced the fewest number of stunts, and by a significant degree, only 30 dropbacks on which they have faced a stunt. Now, they've only allowed pressure on 10 of those 30, but the other 5 teams in the top 5 at blocking up stunts well, not allowing pressure on stunts, have faced almost double the number of stunts that the Eagles have. You also look at the Eagles, one thing that sticks out to me, they have played not a great schedule thus far. Okay, 29th in terms of strength of schedule played. They faced the Detroit Lions, who are the worst defense in human history, the Minnesota Vikings, the Washington Commanders, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Arizona Cardinals. Do any of those teams, Seth, tell you anything about how the Eagles might handle this Cowboys defense? You know, what's your level of concern, I guess, about this Eagles offense, which has looked incredible? They are amazing, especially from a passing perspective. Do you think that they'll be able to handle, or do you have any evidence that they'll be able to handle the Cowboys?
So you look at them against those defenses that you named, and you're like, oh my God, Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator, Nick Sirianni, the head coach, are the 2 smartest people that have ever lived. Like, the receivers are open on every single play. They're wide open. Oh my God, they're so smart. They're calling the right plays. They're calling the right concepts, and no one can stop them. And then you take a step back and you remember the teams that they're facing. Now, still, with that said, I mean, they've dominated those teams, right? Mm-hmm. They've done what they're supposed to do against those teams. I think if you want to get really specific here, talk about the Jaguars game. Jaguars are getting beat up playing a 4-man defensive line, okay? And they decided to, at halftime, say, or maybe it was somewhere in the third quarter, say, okay, look, we're getting beat up kind of 5-on-4, 5 offensive linemen versus 4 defensive linemen. We're going to play 5-on-5. We're going to play with 5 defensive linemen. And they had a little bit more success. Philly had a couple nice runs, but really they were kind of stuffed a bit when they went to that 5-man defensive line. But what it did was it forced them to play 1 high coverages. And then you could see that the Philly could still, and now they got away with it again because of the rain in that game. If you remember, it was pretty much a monsoon. Mm-hmm. But so that's what the game I think is going to look like on Sunday night, just because that's kind of how the Cowboys play. Anyways, not necessarily with the 5-man defensive fronts. They've kind of got away from that over this offseason. But I think just all the cover 1, all the cover 3 that they're going to play. And like I said, that gives you opportunities with the three. I mean, I mentioned the 2 of them with Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, but you have to add in Dallas Goedert as well. So it's going to give opportunities for those players, and they're really good at taking advantage of those type of defenses.
All right, our question: the mismatch or matchup your eye is on that will have the biggest impact on this game is what, Seth?
I said it before. I think it's going to be Devonta Smith versus Anthony Brown. If that's the matchup they go for, I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe AJ Brown plays mostly on the left side. Mm-hmm. Correct. And then, so Devonta Smith will be on the right side. I believe that would match up with Anthony Brown and Devonta Smith. So I like that matchup for Devonta Smith.
All right. Bets that we're making here. The Cowboys are +6, total at 42. Brad, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I've been riding my Cowboys. We talked a lot about that. I still think even with Cooper Rush, 6 is a lot of points. I'm not saying I love it, but if I was making a play on this game, that's what it would be.
Seth, what about you?
Yeah, it's a big number, but I think that the Eagles at home give them a good run for their money. I'm going to take Eagles plus whatever it is, 5.5, 6.
Okay. You mean minus?
Yeah, minus.
Yeah, the Eagles are.
I would love to take the Eagles at plus 6.
I was gonna say. Yeah, it's really interesting. The Dallas Cowboys 4-1. They are averaging. They have a worse EPA per pass play than per run play. Okay. That's how bad their passing offense has been. It has not been great. Um, the Eagles defense we did not talk about, but are strong from from a cornerback perspective. I think at 6, I'm it's moved a little bit. I am tempted, very tempted to play the Cowboys. I think if I had to play a spread, that's what I would go for. I'm looking right now to see if I can find the player props. I'm not seeing them yet, but I'm just going
Can't
to
find
ride with
Devontae
Seth.
Smith. Yeah, I was looking.
I'm going to ride with Seth here. I don't know what Smith's total, is going to be, but I'm going to play him over receptions, over passing yards. That's the bet I'm going to ride with.
If you could make a bet, I don't know if this is obviously not available. If you could make a bet under Philly screen passes thrown. So they threw like 14 last week against the Cardinals. The Cardinals gave it to them because again, it's mostly our RPO. So you're just reading it pre-snap. Oh, there's no guy over there. I'm going to throw the ball. That's not how the Cowboys are going to play it. So that might mean an under. If Dallas Goedert, who caught a lot of those screens, his number is inflated because of last week. Maybe take the under there.
I saw your tweet. Yeah, he leads the league in yards after the catch. Not tight ends, not all
That's
players.
insane.
Dallas Goedert leads the league in yards after the catch right now.
By the way, Ben Brown, who is in charge of all of our predictive modeling for our betting products, both spreads, totals, and player props, he has been blindly betting every single receptions under on the player props tool and is printing money. Okay, so you're welcome. Go do it. Go get a PFF subscription. Promo code forecast FORECAST gets you 20%, 25% off, and you too can profit. Seth, this was an absolute delight for the second week in a row, which means you're going to get a third week. Okay, like Cooper Rush,
yes.
you're gonna keep riding. I don't know if we have a Dak Prescott to bring in for you.
We got a former teammate of Cooper Rush on the podcast. You
There
can't
you
pay
go.
for that.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Danucci, for coming on.
I would like to point out that I know I brought this up before, but I am the Cooper Rush of Division 6 flag football when shocked by Canada. So it really works out. Like I appreciate the compliment.
I cannot wait for us to play flag football at some point in time. I don't know which country or which state it's going to happen in, but it will be delightful. Seth, thank you so much. Go follow him if you don't already. Go read Seth's content, as long as it's not Twitter threads about sandwiches or things other than football or music or any of that stuff. But his football stuff is really good.
Okay.
Thank you, Seth.
See you guys.
A couple of things to remind all of you about. The first is that No House Advantage. That's the name, and it says they mean what they say. They do not take any of your cash. They let you profit on all of what you invest with their Pick'em contests, where you can play against other people for a shot at winning $250,000 in cash. You can up to 20x your entry by playing versus the house, where you just bet on 5 player props. You pick over or under. It's very, very simple. You can do it for the NFL, also the NBA and NHL as well. Those are about to get started. So make sure that you go take advantage of all that No House Advantage has to offer. Download the app or go to nohouseadvantage.com. Use promo code forecast and it will match your first deposit up to $25. That is at No House Advantage. Also, DraftKings, our friends, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Here's what they're doing for you. New customers, bet $5, promo code PFF, get $200 in free bets. Members of the printing press, use promo code PFF. It's very helpful. Go to DraftKings, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF, $200 in free bets if your team wins when you place a $5 bet on any football game. It's that simple. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions, they do apply. And last but not least, the stock market for sports. It's symbol, SIMBULL. You can find it in the App Store. Use promo code forecast there and get a free team stock valued up to $150 just for signing up. It's that easy. You can buy or sell shares of your favorite teams and then profit when they do well, either by selling the stock or by collecting a dividend when they win. Teams that are up over the last few weeks, the Vikings are up, the Broncos are down. That probably doesn't surprise you. The Eagles also up as well after a 5-0 start. So go to symbol, SIMBULL, the stock market for sports. We now welcome Tej Seth, who is a member of the printing press, was on the forecast a few weeks ago, helping guess the lines on a Sunday evening. We brought him back because we enjoyed the time that we spent with him. Now to pick a lock of the week. We managed without Eric for the first time last week with the Bengals plus 3.5 on Sunday night. Got the job done. So hopefully we can make it happen once again tonight. The way this works is we're going to go around the horn. We are going to talk about the bets that we like the most. And at the end of it, we're going to align completely and pool all of our money together, all of the savings that we have, let it ride on one bet and hope and pray. And then we'll buy a Cobble mansion with all that money. Let's get rocking here and start. I'll let you kick it off, Tej, since you're the guest here. Where would you like to start?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can go a little bit risky here. I don't have as many savings as you guys have. So, I know, but I'm just kidding. I'm going to go with Ravens minus 5.5 as my pick. When you look at this game against the Giants, there's a pretty big quarterback advantage on the Ravens side. And I know that's kind of Brad's thing is whenever you can get the better quarterback at a price you think, is like advantageous towards them, you kind of take it. Lamar Jackson ranks 9th in expected points added per play this year. Daniel Jones ranks 20th. So even though Brian Dable is getting a lot of praise deservingly for getting a lot out of Daniel Jones right now, he's still a below average quarterback. And Lamar Jackson is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, both as a passer and a rusher. The rushing yards over expected metric we have using PFF data. Lamar Jackson leads the entire league in total rushing yards over expected. And since he's a quarterback, he rushes it way less than most running backs. So I think that's important for a line like 5.5, because if the Ravens are up in the fourth quarter and have the ball up, let's say like 10, they can kind of run out the clock with Lamar better than most teams can kill the clock. And that way the Giants won't backdoor cover as much. So I do like the Ravens here in this game.
Big fan of Lamar. Brad, where are you going with your first bet?
Yeah, so I want to go with the Arizona Cardinals laying less than a field goal at Seattle. And I know both Tej and I are the bets that you do not like when we discussed them on Sunday. So I found that funny as he started there. But I think it was very telling last week. We knew New Orleans was not going to have Jameis Winston, not going to have Michael Thomas, and Vegas had no issue keeping it at 5.5. Actually, may have gone from 5 to 5.5 because this Seattle defense is just atrocious. And I know Arizona's not playing well at all. We love Arjun's pick during Sunday's show, talking about how Seattle's great at the scripted plays and Arizona's awful in the scripted plays. And then second half, Arizona is a better football team than Seattle. And I know it's laying a couple points on the road, but I just think it's a get-right spot for Arizona. One more week before DeAndre Hopkins gets back. But I just think, Vegas is kind of telling you what they think of Seattle right now with these spreads.
They sure are. I mean, they're definitely not valuing Geno Smith as highly as they should be. I got to say, I think it is ridiculous that Arizona is still getting this much respect. I feel like people are looking back at their start to last season and going, it's the Cardinals. They'll figure it out. It's like, figure what out? Their offense is a complete nightmare. I'm going to go with a teaser for my first submission here. The Kansas City Chiefs, the game of the year thus far, Kansas City at home against Buffalo. Kansas City is getting 2.5. So I'm going to tease them up to 8.5. You're telling me that the Bills are going to, the Bills winning by 8.5 is blowing out the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay. I know we've seen it happen before. I don't think it's going to happen again. As good as Josh Allen is playing, Patrick Mahomes playing very, very well also. And then I'm going to tease that with Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Bucks, who are at 8.5 point favorite in Pittsburgh. Tease that down to 2.5, just below 3. Tom Brady versus Kenny Pickett is a matchup that I want to be on the Tom Brady side of. So that is my first submission. It is of the teaser variety. Tej, we're back around to you. Give us another bet you like.
Yeah, no, I love those picks that you guys gave out. I'll go with a prop bet here. And Brad, I'm sorry to put this one out, but Justin Fields, Justin Fields under 0.5 passing touchdowns plus 175 at BetMGM, which is, the sportsbook I think we like to use here at PFF. So, plus 175 implies they think that there's a 36% probability of this happening. Justin Fields, in 50% of his NFL career starts, has thrown 0 touchdown passes. The league average for that's 21%. So he basically throws 0 touchdown passes double the amount of time that
Jesus.
the rest of the NFL does it. Outside of garbage time, the Chicago Bears have had a 43% overall pass rate this season, which is last in the NFL by a decent margin because, George, your San Francisco 49ers are second to last at 49%. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
6% difference between the Bears being in last and the 49ers being in second to last. And then, PFF's player props tool has this bet as a plus 13.4% edge, which is the highest edge for any prop that you can bet on Thursday night. So I think all of those factors together, I like Justin Fields under 0.5 passing touchdowns.
I'll add one more factor for you, too. There are supposed to be sustained 16-mile-an-hour winds with gusts above 20 miles an hour during the game tomorrow night. So, so that probably also works in your favor. Also, I will say, George, real quick, I didn't know we could do teasers for this. I tweeted today, BRB going to take out a loan to bet Chiefs-Bucks teaser. So I love that pick of yours.
Good. It's a good thing that I don't go on Twitter during the day, or I would have felt like I was stealing your pick. By the way, Tej, you missed this. We had Seth on before you, and we were talking about that Thursday night disaster of a game. The bet that I decided to make was Carson Wentz over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Now, the wind may help Carson Wentz. He's still going to throw the ball. He'll certainly throw it to both teams. The wind may correct some of his throws in the other direction and help him out. Yeah, exactly. All right, Brad, where are you going next?
Yeah, so I like Cleveland Browns minus 2.5. I was waiting for this to get under a field goal. It now is on BetMGM. I think I mentioned this on Sunday as well. I can't quit betting them. I bet them 4 out of 5 weeks so far. I mean, they're a very good team, top 10 in EPA per play right now. The defense has been a little bit suspect, but I think this is a spot against more tape on Bailey Zappi. I think we know what we're playing with now at this point. Both Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney back to close to 100%. They need to win this football game, and I think they're going to.
It's interesting. Going back to last week, the bet that I got the most wrong was the Detroit Lions against New England Patriots. I played it in the Circa Millions. Every other bet that I placed either won or should have won. Seattle ended up not covering, as we just talked about. Bill Belichick owns Jared Goff's soul. He might be dating his fiance at this point. Like, it's not, and which is a nice look for Bill Belichick, to be clear. The question that I have here is he's facing Jacoby Brissett, who, former New England Patriot, obviously. Is this another situation where Bill Belichick just has his number? Also, the chances that Bailey Zappi is just like, the next Tom Brady, I'm going to sell those thus far. And I think what's really interesting here about this game, in Cleveland at home, as opposed to, in New England, where they've got, friendly confines there, the Cleveland Browns 0.11 EPA per run play. I mean, that is insane. Okay. There are teams from a passing perspective that would love that. You look at the Patriots team here, they're not exactly the most robust from a run stopping perspective. So I can get on board with that one. Let me go to my next one, which is the game that we talked about with Seth here on Sunday night. Dallas Cowboys +6. As much as I love Jalen Hurts, and I was on the Jalen Hurts bandwagon very early on, right after his first game, people hated me for it. The Philadelphia Eagles have yet to play a really good team. They have the 29th easiest schedule played thus far. Dallas Cowboys, Cooper Rush. I'm not buying into Cooper Rush. I just think the Dallas Cowboys are a pretty good team. This is a divisional game. And in this one, I just expect it to be a little bit lower scoring. So I will take the 6 with the Dallas Cowboys. Tej, you're up next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, good picks, guys. I like those a lot as well. I was looking at, the Jets-Packers game, and I think that I like, whatever way you want to bet for points to be scored by either team, whether you take the over 45.5 or you take the Jets team total over 18.5. I like either of those bets in this game. And, the thing about the Packers defense right now, Mike Renner put out a really good tweet about this, where he says they've given up the second fewest passing yards in the NFL through 5 weeks, but they've allowed the most yards of any defense on crossing routes by far this season. And when you look at, what the Packers want to do at defense, they get into quarters a lot and they don't communicate well. They're not passing off players in between that defense. And I think the Jets have the receiving talent, and Zach Wilson has played okay, which is pretty crazy to balance that out and really take advantage of a Packers defense that's struggling right now. And then on the other side of the ball, Aaron Jones is he's one of the best rushers in the NFL right now. He's second behind Lamar in rushing yards over expected. I think, the Packers can really lean into him. And what we know about this season is that rushing has become closer to passing efficiency wise. So if the Packers lean on the run in this game, I do think they can put up points, while, in earlier seasons, leaning on the run would have led to less points. So whatever you want to play, Jets Packers over 45.5 or Jets team total over 18.5. I like both of those bets in this game.
Brad, you're up next.
Yep, I love you said that. I'm already on over 45, so I love to hear that as well. So last one, kind of crazy, a bit of a narrative bet, but I also honestly think it's just silly line movement. So Carolina opened plus 9.5. When it was announced Baker Mayfield was hurt, it's now at 11. I don't think PJ Walker deserves them to any change to the spread. Yeah. You also, a bit of a trend, which I always avoid, but, new coach. I think a team that wants to prove themselves to a new coach and all those types of things. And then lastly, why are the Rams laying 11 points against anyone, particularly, a team with the edge rushers and interior with Derek Brown and Brian Burns and all these guys in Carolina? It's just too many points. I think the Rams are going to win, but I'll take 11 points against this Rams team right now. Fewer points scored than the Chicago Bears.
It's
Los Angeles Rams.
It's bad. Joseph Noteboom it has not been good. Both tackles rank 40th or worse, 43rd or worse in PFF grade thus far, and the interior gets worse. So to your point around both Brian Burns and then Derek Brown in the interior, Derek Brown 9th out of 121 defensive tackles in PFF grade. Brian Burns with a 73 PFF grade overall, but is a pass rush specialist. And then you think about on the outside, JC Horn has been really good. What do we know about the Los Angeles Rams? It's Cooper Kupp, who's still the highest graded receiver in the NFL. And then a bunch of dudes that you see at the YMCA. Like Allen Robinson is the 101st graded wide receiver. Ben Skoranek, 98. It's not as if it's just Matt Stafford in the offensive line being terrible. Like it's Cooper Kupp. Whatever that meme is of, the person carrying like the train in the city on their back, that is Cooper Kupp with the Los Angeles Rams. And I love the Matt Rule was fired. Matt Rule was garbage. Matt Rule was really bad. Baker Mayfield was garbage and was really bad. Like it aligns really nicely. Okay. Tej, do you have any more that you wanted to highlight, or are we ready to pick?
Yeah, those were the ones that I really liked. And yeah, loved your guys' bets as well.
All right. We've got to find some consensus here. Tej, which of either yours or the ones that you've heard are you most ready to risk it all on?
Mm-hmm. I loved your Chiefs Bucks teaser leg. I thought that was really, really well thought out. You're having these really good quarterbacks, get lines bet in their favor. And, since Brad put that out as well, I feel pretty confident about that one. Two really sharp people thinking on the same wavelength.
Brad, where's your head at?
Yeah, even last week, the Chiefs and Bucks didn't play particularly well and still covered some teasers. I guess the Chiefs technically pushed, if you only tease by 6 points, but Bucks didn't play well, still covered. I think it's an easy decision for me as well.
Okay. All right. So there it is. The lock of the week is Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes in a teaser. Bucks down to -2.5 in Pittsburgh against the Steelers, and the Chiefs out to +8.5 at home against a preview of the AFC Championship game against the Buffalo Bills. That's the lock of the week. Tej, this was fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Tell people where they can find your content, both written, audio, and otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. Always love coming on. You can find my written content on pff.com. I do a quarterback props article and a running back props article every week. So if you just go on pff.com, you can check that out there.
Or the app.
Yeah, or the app, yeah. And then on Twitter, you can find me at Tej FB Analytics, so TEJ FB Analytics. And then you can listen to me and Arjun's podcast, Take the Points, on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you want to listen.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. That's where I got the idea to have these two be consistent guests on the forecast. We had Arjun with us to guess the lines on Sunday. Who I don't know who's we have to keep track. Who's giving out the best advice between you and Arjun, and have some sort of competition there amongst the Michigan boys. Make one of you do something if you lose. But this was great. Make sure you go follow Tej. I would say this. There are a few people on social media whose content generally adds to the conversation. For a guy who's got analytics in his handle, you wouldn't expect that, right? You'd expect that to be a complete cesspool of, just retweeting and quote tweeting people and shitting on them. But Tej does a very nice job, as does Arjun and the rest of that analytics group and cohort, of actually creating content, data visualization that helps you understand the game of football better, to the point that I am actually thinking about how we can get this into PFF's app in consumable and delightful fashion. So hopefully I sold that enough for the members of the printing press out there. We'll be back on Sunday night to guess the lines and recap what was hopefully a successful lock of the week. Tej, thank you for hanging out. Brad, as usual, I appreciate you making my facial hair look that much better. We love y'all. Peace.